Before the war, tensions were high in Europe. There was a troubled peace that was maintained until Archduke Ferdinand, the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, was assassinated along with his wife in Sarajevo, Bosnia. This sparked a long chain of events that would lead to war. Austria-Hungary blamed Serbia for the attack and gave them the Serbian ultimatum. The ultimatum contained harsh terms that would be impossible for Serbia to accept. This stalemate eventually brought all of Europe to war due to the treaties that existed. The Triple Alliance included Austria-Hungary, Germany, and Italy, while the Triple Entente included Russia, France, and Great Britain. Many tactics were used throughout the war, but one of the most memorable and iconic was propaganda. Propaganda is information, especially of a biased or misleading nature, used to promote or publicize a particular political cause or point of view. It was an integral part of World War I, which used advertising techniques to persuade people to support the war, to recruit soldiers, and to encourage people to conserve resources. Propaganda was mainly used as a cartoon or poster. It was usually implemented for one of 4 different types of World War I propaganda: recruitment, home front, war bonds, and rationing. Recruitment propaganda invoked patriotic feelings and persuaded young men to join the war. Take a look at this. This piece is a great example of such propaganda. It depicts a young American soldier in a heroic position in front of the American flag. It is showing young men looking at this poster a taste of the possible glory that they would achieve by joining the war. The poster also uses a slogan by saying, "Join the army for home and country," to make sure the message sticks. The message being that by joining, they will be valiantly serving their homeland. Homefront propaganda convinced factory workers and other civilians that they mattered just as much as the soldiers. This propaganda also told them to change what they manufacture. For example, factories that usually made clothing started to make uniforms for soldiers instead. War bonds propaganda asked for civilians to buy war bonds. War bonds are debt securities issued by a government to finance military operations and other expenditures in times of war. The bonds also remove money from circulation and thus help to control inflation. In other words, war bonds were small loans to the government that paid for military operations and would be paid back whenever the government could. Look at this one. This propaganda uses figurative speech to explain to civilians that war bonds are what pay for the war, and that without them, there would be no bullets to shoot at the enemy. Rationing propaganda asks civilians to eat less and donate more food to help the soldiers. These are the steps that had to be taken in total war. This poster shows a loaf of bread with silhouetted ships in the background, presumably headed to war. This is an example of rationing propaganda with rhyming thrown in to stick the message. Propaganda was used by the government to raise awareness of their state in the war and to invoke patriotic and nationalistic feelings. Wartime propaganda was planned to create enthusiasm for the war effort and enlist public support against foreign attempts to undercut America's war aims. The propaganda was very effective. A total of 4,734,991 United States forces were mobilized during World War I. These included both men and women serving in the U.S. forces, National Guard units, and draft units. By 1917, ammunition factories that primarily employed women workers produced 80% of the weapons and shells used by the Army. Furthermore, women's employment rates skyrocketed during World War I, from 23.6% of the working population in 1914 to around 43% in 1918. This means that propaganda was very successful at getting women to join the workforce. The rationing encouragement made sure that the Army had enough to eat. War bonds were popular enough to fund U.S. wartime efforts.